We've done train blockades, road blockades, a lot of grievances. Residential schools, 60 scoop. You know, we talk about it, we try to do action on it. And when we hear about places like Standing Rock, of course we're going to do something. We're all First Nations people. They're picking on us again, right? Trying to take over what they think is theirs. But anyways, you know, one of the things that I told somebody tonight is try to grab your attention. And I'd like to thank Standing Rock for this opportunity, for letting me speak to make this announcement. I myself am a residential school survivor. I'm a 60 scoop victim. And, you know, like I said, I've done a lot of activism. I know about the missing murdered Native women's issue. My mother was murdered while I was in the residential schools. And, you know, in Toronto here and through Turtle Island, most of Turtle Island, residential school survivors have gotten their payouts. And, you know, other compensation, whether it's through the other process that they go through, if they file their papers right, you know, you go through that whole process, you tell your story and everything else, you go through the court, whatever, you go through the system to get your money for the residential schools. You know, everybody, you know, this Murray Sinclair, whoever the fuck he is, goes around the country thinking that, you know, everything's okay. Well, guess what? It's not okay. There's a lot of other people that are still pissed off about the residential schools and the so-called reconciliation talk. How the hell are you going to reconcile with your abuser? How do you reconcile with your abuser? You know? Yeah, we've talked and talked and talked. Look at us, 500 years later, we're standing in front of Trump Tower, fucking protesting, talking some more. No, Standing Rock is right. Let's do some action. But, you know, before I get off track here, I wanted to make this announcement, just to get your attention, grab your attention. This is what they're so typical of, you know. They kind of like, what do you call, well, it's always been a propaganda machine we're up against, right? First Nations people. People that come from all over the world, they don't have a clue what happens with First Nations people here. There should be, you know, Syrians that come into the country, you know, other peoples that come into the country should be educated on First Nations issues. Maybe then we wouldn't have situations like Standing Rock if the people were properly educated. And the reason I say all this too is, like I said, you know, there's not a lot of people that know about different things here, First Nations issues, right? Like I said, we do a lot of activism, we do a lot of media work, we try to get the word out, right? But we're always getting questioned, you know, people that have been here, what, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 60 years, 100 years, they're still asking us questions about First Nations issues, you know? And like I said, here's the big build-up. I've been trying to build this up. If you guys are a little bit curious as to what I'm getting at. talking. But anyways, no. I'm just saying that out in Newfoundland, you know, people know where Newfoundland is, right? Okay, right on. So out in Newfoundland, you know, out here, everybody else got their compensation and everything else, right? You know, they got their money. Some people are happy, you know, and some are already broke. But that's the reality of it. But one of the things about Newfoundland, they're First Nations people, residential school survivors, they haven't gotten a penny yet. You know why I say that is because, like I said, we're moving on to the 60 scoop now. Everybody's starting to forget about the residential schools, and nobody's contacted the elders, nobody's contacted the survivors in Newfoundland to ask about the residential school compensation fund or the handout that was supposed to happen. It's just within the past few weeks that I've learned that myself. And the first time I heard it, I was pretty pissed off about it. And then I bumped into him again, and he told me again about the details. And then he says, you know, and you know what to think? It's not a First Nations person that's telling me this. It's you know, one of the people that have come here from across the big water, right? He's a white guy, and he's telling me this. He says, you know, I'm pretty pissed off at the government. I'm pretty pissed off at what they do. He says, some of the elders back there, they're starting to get mad. You know, and I'm looking at him, you know, what do you mean, who's they? You know, like, and if you get the joke. But anyways, no, but the point is, like I said, the survivors, they haven't gotten any payout from the residential school.
Because they weren't considered part of Canada.
Yeah, but still.
No, that's what the reason is. They weren't part of Confederation.
Okay.
So they've been ignored. Yeah.
So they're ignored. So that explains that situation. But I had to come all the way down here to find that out. You know, we should have known that. We should have known that a long time ago. But still, this is what they do. This is how they get to where they are, right? And I want to take this opportunity also to point out that I've started to try to do interviews on YouTube. You know, why the fuck are we letting them tell our story? You know, why are we letting the Toronto Star tell our story? Why are we letting government tell our story? Today's world, we can tell our own story. And so I've tried to set up interviews with survivors from the residential schools. I've tried to set up interviews with people from the 60s scoop to come on YouTube and tell our story. When you tell our story, you're telling my story. And when I'm telling my story, I'm telling your story, I'm telling your grandfather's story, the grandfathers before him, I'm telling your mother's story, you're telling your mother's story when you're telling it, because this is our story and this is what happened to us. So why are we letting the media tell our story? Why are we letting government tell our story? And other organizations and people that profit from our story and what happened here. Because when you listen to us, this is when you get the truth as to what really happened here. It wasn't colonization. It's called the genocide of a nation after nation. It doesn't matter whether you were Mohawk. It doesn't matter whether you were Cree. It doesn't matter whether you were Ojibwe, like myself. It was called genocide of a nation. And this is how they got to where they are. But people from all over the world, man, they didn't have a clue. They didn't inquire. No, they were too busy enjoying the fruits of the land, getting fat off the land. So today, you know, hopefully by doing some of the action that we do today, and like I said, I'd like to thank Standing Rock for this very opportunity. We're behind Standing Rock 110%. You know, we're going to do more for Standing Rock. And I recommend that Standing Rock comes to us and helps us out with our grievances with Line 9 pipeline or other. So, you know, we got other issues we can face off with in ourselves. Line 10, Line 3, Line whatever line you got, man. It's called the Big Snake.
Damn.
And so, you know, like I said, I promised this guy from Newfoundland, I try to tell you about the residential school survivors in Newfoundland. They haven't gotten their payout yet. And hopefully we can do something about it. And hopefully you tune into this YouTube that we're trying to get. The first interview I did was the elder Vern Harper. He talks about the 1930s scoop. Like, doesn't that shock you? Like, everybody's talking about the 1960s scoop. Everybody's freaking out about the 1960s scoop and all the kids that got took into their homes, which I was a victim of.
Every generation.
Every generation. So now we got the elder Vern Harper talking about the 1930s scoop and other happenings. So how come we're not entering that in the court case that's happening at Osgood Hall? Does anybody know what's going on with Osgood Hall with the 60 scoop? So hopefully next week we'll find out more. Thank you for this opportunity. Miigwech.
You guys are awesome. I thank you very much for your patience. And I thank you very much for your energy. You guys are truly dedicated. Thank you. Who? Sure.
I forgot one thing. Ban Trump! Ban Trump! Ban Trump! Ban Trump! Ban Trump!
Impeach Trump!
Ban Trump!
Impeach Trump! He'll get impeached. I'm getting a peach. Oh, my fingers are frozen. Huh?
Yeah, just hold the mic.
I think it's colder down there in Dakota. My fingers are cold, but I think it's colder down there in Dakota, ain't it?
Thank you for the honor to play the
Cops are
song.
being good.
Okay, bring the mic up a little further, whatever. Yeah, hold it here, roughly, and I'll play it too. Okay.
I gotta switch.